Good afternoon, bot builders, or good morning, or good evening, depending on what time it is in the world for you, where you are. I hope you are having an amazing Tuesday afternoon, morning, or evening, or even night for some of you, as I'm sure. I've got a wonderful session planned for us today, but I feel like I need to address the elephant in the room, which is that controversially, I am not drinking coffee today. I am drinking tea. I took my afternoon coffee a bit early today, and so instead I'm drinking a nice cup of Earl Grey tea. Equally caffeinated, however, not my usual coffee, as we might say. All right, let's dive into what I've got planned for us today. I thought it might be fun on the heels of last week's stream where I took us through a kind of quick start tour or a rip-roaring tour through the studio to see what we might actually build on Botpress in order to see some value just in a couple of minutes. So maybe before we start building, I'll give you some context here. The purpose of these office hours is to, if you're a beginner on Botpress or you kind of just want to level up your skills, see what you can build quickly or easily without too much fuss. The beautiful thing about Botpress is you can spend hours and hours building something really powerful with a lot of different workflows that can do a lot of different things, or you can start on the other end of the spectrum and arrive at some value pretty quickly. So the plan for today is to build a bot that we would find helpful over here at Botpress. So we're in the world of building software products, as it were. And of course, there are way too many of you to have individual conversations with all of you. And there are so many of you having conversations with so many of us that one of the biggest dynamics here at Botpress is that what the heck do we do with all this information? How do we collate it? How do we condense it into workable insights? How do we turn the user feedback loop? How do we close that, right? How do we make that something workable? So the idea here is maybe the story I'm telling for today is that I'm a product manager or I'm a community manager or I'm a team of both because we are here. And how do I take, I've got hundreds, thousands of people visiting my website, looking at my documentation, doing a lot of stuff there. How can I turn that into actionable insights for improving or building a software product? I know that a lot of you are interested in SaaS, software as a service, and so it would be nice to provide you with some value really quickly. So that's kind of the overarching plan for today. As you can see, we've got a fresh bot in front of us, so we're starting from nothing, and then hopefully we'll be able to see some value really quickly. Before that, I'm going to dive into a question that I see in chat that I really love. Is there any way to use Botpress with Roblox for making dialogue models for NPC characters? Okay, love this question. I don't know the answer to this question, but the first thing I would say is, does Roblox have an API? Can you connect to that somehow? I don't really know how that works. It's an excellent question, though. I would also love to know more about what the use case is here. Beautiful question. Okay, so let's return back to our story. I am a product manager. I've just got off a call with my community manager and I say, hey, we've got hundreds and hundreds of people signing up and visiting the product each day. I'm having trouble finding out, I'm looking at Hotjar sessions, I'm looking at Mixpanel, and I'm having trouble understanding what questions they have and what field they work in, what they want, and all of that good stuff. What can we do from the beginning in order to maybe alleviate some of these stresses? I think a good place to start whenever you're building a bot is to ask yourself, what pieces of information do I have? And what do I want to know? Let's start with what pieces of information I have. The first thing I'm going to do is I'll add a knowledge base to provide some of that information that I do have. So one of the places that if you're a product manager or a community manager in the SaaS world, you end up answering the same question over and over again, which makes sense. Of course, the reason frequently asked questions or FAQs exist is because your users are going to have similar questions. One of the most basic applications of a chatbot is just to alleviate or streamline or expedite your user's ability to get answers to these questions. Just to demonstrate this, I'm going to provide a simple description of my software product. So here I'll just say something like software product, Toothy can analyze pictures of your teeth, let's say, and determine information based on the photos. This is the first information that I could think of, the first software product that I could think of. If you're out there watching this, perhaps in the future, and you end up building Toothy, this is me claiming my intellectual property rights. Inalienable. All right. So the idea here is, in a real bot, this would be an example of a knowledge base. This would provide information like what the product does, maybe some company history, maybe some best practices, so on and so forth. But for now, I'll just call it Toothy. Okay, so that's the information that I have. What is the information that I want? Well, my suspicion as a product manager is that dentists are going to be interested in using this product. But maybe spoiler alert for all of the people here, what the product manager of Toothy doesn't know is that dentists are interested in this product, but there's actually a huge swath of academic researchers. So maybe like people that work in universities who don't have dental patients, but are really interested in this kind of product because it can streamline their resources, their access to this kind of stuff. So this is a very common problem or a very common dynamic in the SaaS world, is that you build a product for one person and then lo and behold, actually the things that you expect to happen don't end up happening. And in the end, your user base is made up entirely of a group of people that you didn't think would be there. And so what this does is that if you're in the SaaS world, you're very familiar with this. You might be looking at something like a mixed panel session or a Hotjar session, and you might be looking and saying, well, my users aren't behaving the way that I thought they would, but like numbers in certain places are trending in the right direction and some numbers aren't. And so my hypothesis hasn't been validated. So I need to get a bigger sample size, because I've spoken to a few dentists and they like the platform, but there's this whole, there's hundreds or thousands of people using a feature that I thought nobody would like, or they're using it in a different way. This is all really common stuff. So as somebody who works in the product space, the best way to get around this is to talk to as many users as possible. But of course, that's not really a scalable solution. So that's where conversational AI or chatbots can make a huge difference. So the first thing that I would do here, let's say I had like half an hour, I time boxed some of this and I just want to pop a simple bot onto my website, is I would just send a simple greeting to my user and I would say something like, hey, I'm Gummy, the Toothy AI assistant. I don't know if this is clever, but it sure is something. All right, so we built Gummy. Gummy has sent a message, and I'll just call this node welcome. Okay. If you followed along from, I think it was last week or the week before, I always leave one node at the beginning of a bot blank in case I need to change anything in the intro. So I'm going to create another node here, and this is where the meet will actually happen. A little candy emoji. I think my dentist would not be happy about how much candy I eat. But if you're a dentist in the Montreal area and you know me, no, you don't. This is not... Don't talk about my candy eating habits. All right, so we have Gummy. They're interested. And so my user is now talking to them. What's the first piece of information as the product manager, I'm interested in here? Well, the first thing I want to do is validate my hypothesis. The simplest question is, I built Toothy for dentists, but I'm not sure that dentists are actually using this. I've got two paths forward there. The first is that I could double down on my dentist hypothesis and build features that are dentist specific, or I could pivot to my new audience. Both of those are totally valid strategies depending on your personality. Maybe you have investors, maybe you're one person, maybe you're at seed round, whatever the case may be. But you either have the users you want or the users you have, and maybe you can get both, but ideally we would like to be specific. So let me just ask a simple question. I'm going to provide a single choice here for my user. And maybe if this was a more open-ended scenario, I would provide maybe a raw input card. So in other words, I would allow my user to put some information that is open-ended, but I really just want one piece of information. Is this person a dentist or not? So maybe instead, I'm just going to extract maybe something like a Boolean variable. Remember, Boolean is coding speak for yes or no. So I'll ask them, are you a dentist? And then I'm going to say dentist is the variable in which we store that response. And so if they are a dentist, they'll get sent down this path. And if they're not a dentist, they'll get sent down this path. And so I'm going to pause because I see a conversation happening in chat that I want to be a part of. So earlier, in response to the Roblox question, our DevRel team, Jeremy, says, when we release our chat API, you might be able to connect to Roblox, which will allow you to talk to the bot from external services. That sounds great. When is the chat API releasing? I don't think that we can provide any specifics in typical startup fashion, but I'm going to say the omnipotent soon, the omnipresent soon is when the chat API will be releasing-ish. Yes, Sunni. All right. So let's highlight for a sec what we have here. The first thing that happens in our bots conversation is that we find out immediately whether or not the person visiting our website is a dentist. And so remember, in the context of Toothy, the SaaS product that I'm building, this is the fundamental question that I'm asking. And so I'm wondering, are the people that are visiting my software product, are they dentists or not? I need to know. And then let's see what happens after. And so let's continue building our conversation in a way where we continue to gather information. Now, for the dentists, I'm going to say, I'll call this node yes dentist. I'm a lot less interested, maybe for the time being, in people that are dentists, because I know that, I've done a lot of research on dentists. I know what they want. But the thing I'm more interested in is, what if this person is not a dentist? Why the heck are they using my product? Because I built it for dentists specifically. And again, if you're in the SaaS phase, this is a very familiar question, is why are people using this? And so this is typically, if you're familiar with doing user interviews, this is something that happens a lot. This is a question I ask very often to my users, is like, well, what problem are you facing? Or how did you end up on using Botpress, or that kind of thing? And that's not a scalable solution, right? There's only so many hours in the day that you have. And as much as I enjoy talking to users, it can be a little difficult when you're getting, thousands of conversations a week. All right. Is there I see a question from yesterday in the chat here. About Botpress on-prem, Botpress Cloud. You cannot set up Botpress Cloud on-prem. It's entirely, it's a managed cloud service. So that's the axiom. That should answer your question, I believe. Jeremy's got you there as well. All right. So again, I'm curious to know, the people that aren't dentists, what the heck are they using my software for? In this case, I do want to provide them with the space to create a raw input to put a more open-ended answer to this question, because what I want to know is, why are you using my software product? So here, I could just ask something like, you could ask something like, how did you find Toothy? Or you might be able to say something like, what are you using Toothy for? And then that's where maybe I'll store that to a variable called use case. And so we're starting to collect this information. We're starting to collect the pieces of the puzzle that will tell a story about who the heck this person is. So maybe I'll ask them for their use case, and then maybe I can ask them for something like, what fields do you work in? So I'll create another raw input card, and this could be another single choice where you could provide maybe a list of predetermined choices, but I prefer the conversational nature of raw input cards because it makes it feel a bit more natural. So here I'll say something like, so what field do you work in? And this is where, as a product manager, now I'm starting to see, okay, so the use case here might be something like research or like X-ray imaging or whatever the case is. And then here, the raw input, this is where I'm starting to see, okay, so this is actually academics that are using my product. And hopefully the idea here is you'll get a large enough sample size that you'll be able to make data-driven decisions based on the information that you're receiving. So I'll just make sure here that I save this to a variable called ND for not dentist. And then I'll say something like ND field. But of course, you can name that whatever you like. Okay, so now let's take a step back again, as I like to do, and ask ourselves, let's say this conversation, so we've got maybe 100,000 visits to my website every day, maybe like 1%, 10% of them have a conversation with this bot. So now the sample size of people that I'm asking these questions to really starts to scale up exponentially. So this is where even just popping this onto your website, I mean, this took me barely 15 minutes to build. And let's face it, I've been sipping on tea half the time. But we want to turn that into actionable insights, right? So the people are having conversations, but where does that information get stored? Well, let's use a table for that, very simply. Here, I'll call this information. And I've been having trouble saving the titles of my tables. So if you're on the engineering team and you're watching this, please help me at some point. In any case, we'll leave that there. But so the idea here is this table here will collect that information that our users are providing to our bot. So remember, those are a couple of different things. There's single choice dentist, yes or no, and then the not dentist use case and the not dentist, what field do you work in? Yeah, that is a bug. I filed a linear ticket for that earlier this morning. It's a new bug. All right. So how do we take the information that is being collected here and store it in a table? This is probably one of the simplest and also my favorite workflow in Botpress, because as people have been saying for hundreds, thousands of years, knowledge is power, this type of thing. And so the beautiful thing about deploying a simple chatbot onto your website is you can collect all of this information and you're going into product-led decisions with information that makes a lot more sense, with information that is accurate and usable, with minimal inference needed. When I say inference, I don't mean the LLM kind. I mean the kind that you do with your brain, which is technically the same thing, but not really. So the idea behind here is, as someone that works in the product space, I spend a lot of time looking at analytics on places like Mixpanel and Hotjar, which are great, but I end up doing a lot of inference, right? I'm ending up inferring from data what I think is happening, which is fine, but to a point, right? For example, there's a limit to how many times or how much information on Mixpanel can tell me that academics are using Toothy and not dentists. Those are things that I wouldn't be able to collect otherwise. But if I have a table full of hundreds, if not thousands of rows, and then I see over the course of maybe a couple of weeks or months that regularly people are self-identifying as academics, well, that should ideally affect the roadmap of my product. So let's see what's going on here by inserting some records into our table. So the way that we connect, I'm motioning to this with my hands, but maybe that's just the Italian in me because you can't see, I'll use my mouse. But the way that you connect the information that's being collected in this node with this table over here is by using an insert record card. So here, what we're doing is we're collecting these two pieces of information. And then once those two are collected, we're going to insert those records, in other words, a row, into this table here. And this table is persistent for you, the bot owner, across all the conversations that your bot has. So it will aggregate all of that information and it will stay there as long as you need it. And of course, you can export that information as a CSV as well, in case you want to do some data visualization on it, which I love, or share it with some teammates, which I also love. So of course, now, what information are we collecting? We're collecting some strings, so text, a raw input. What are they using Toothy for? So the first column I'm going to save here is just called use case. And the second one is going to be, what was the second piece of information? What field do you work in? And so here I'll just call this field. Actually, if we click into the column again, we can see here we can provide a description to this column. I'm going to provide a little description, both because my partner, the community manager, and also me, Robert, likes to remain organized. So what I'm going to show here is non-dentist use cases for Toothy. And this one as well. I'll do the same thing for field. I'll call this one non-dentist field of work, just so that we remain clear about what's going on here. Okay, so let's pop back over to our insert record card and set this up. Let me show you how. So the idea here is we'll take the two pieces of information that we collected in this node and then select which table we want to put them in. That's here. And so now what's going to happen is automatically the panel over here is going to ask me, which columns do you want to put information in? So of course that's use case. I want to put at workflow dot use case, and in field I want to put at workflow dot not dentist field. Let's just pause here for a second. Of course, this symbol here indicates that this field can support the input of variables, and a variable is just a piece of information that you're collecting from a user that you're storing in some way. So in this case, we're asking a user for what their use case is, we're storing that in this variable, and we're popping that over here in this table. So now, anytime a user ends up at this node and inputs this information, we're going to automatically create a row in this field for that information. You can customize this as well. So you can include things like maybe collecting their email address if you have fewer users and you want to email them, or if you want to include the information, like are they a dentist or not, you could do that as well. But I've chosen to simplify this because all I want information from are the people that are not my dentists. The dentists I know very well, it's everyone else that I have no idea who they are. Axiom, I see you have two questions here. For the pricing information, I'm going to say visit botpress.com/pricing. There we're introducing some changes to our pricing plan soon, so you could just sign up for our mailing list there. Those are going to be live eventually, but unfortunately, I don't have a clearer answer for you at the moment. But they will be live eventually. And then for your second question, involve keeping data on-prem or managed cloud. You can check out the terms of service or the legal page on our website for information about how we store and manage information. All of that information is laid out on our website, so you can find it there. Can you modify column position? Excellent question. I don't know. I don't think so. Unless what you mean is like, can you manage column width, which is you can do that, but you can't manage the column position. So maybe like when you are creating the table, do be mindful about where you put your columns. I do have to say I'm very zoomed in for the purpose of this video, but realistically the studio should look like this. It just looks like this so that you all can see it better. But hey, I don't know your zoom, that's your life. You keep it at whatever zoom percentage you want. Okay, so now let's put ourselves back in the shoes of this kind of product manager, community manager duo that I have. Let's see what kind of information they're going to be faced with. So I'll have some test conversations in the emulator here and then see what happens. Bum, bum, bum. I haven't given them a choice because there's no single choice card. One more time. Am I a dentist? Absolutely not. Although, fun fact, until the age of 13, I used to tell people that I wanted to be an orthodontist because I wanted to be an orthodontist. I was the most boring 13-year-old of all time. And obviously, I'm not an orthodontist, clearly. What am I using Toothy for? I am using Toothy to collect X-ray images of bone scans. I don't know. And then what field do I work in? Here I might say something like academic research. Okay, so if all is working correctly, we should be able to see that information here in the table that we created earlier. And of course, those are added. So if I double click into the use case entry here, we see the full text that's there, and then the field is academic research, of course. So the idea here is that as hundreds, thousands of people visit your website, use your product, interact with your bot, you collect this information that you can then do things with. So we talk a lot about quantitative information. I think I'm going to soapbox for a bit here because of course I am. But the last 10 to 15 years of software development, particularly SaaS products for building other SaaS products, have been focused, rightly so, on quantitative information. So things like Google Analytics, SEO, understanding what people are searching for when they visit your website, what their keywords are, what actions do they take, how many events are taken on your website, how many people sign up, how many people log in successfully, how many people do what you define as a successful action, how many people do not reach that point, so on and so forth. So earlier, back in the day when I was a child, it was really difficult to get a hold of this information. And so we've since solved that problem. We have a ton of information. And one of the things that we're facing right now is what do we do when we want to augment that quantitative data with qualitative data? The best way, or one of the best ways, I'll hedge myself there, to obtain this qualitative information is through conversation, right? Is through talking to people. That's why if you work in the software space or you work in the SaaS space, user interviews and I think Airbnb is really good at like being obsessed with their user, right? Those are really powerful tools to improve the way that you develop your own software product. But of course, that's not really a sustainable solution because you're just one person. And let's say you're a native English speaker, but the majority of your users actually don't speak English. And so you only conduct your user interviews in English. You can miss an entire portion of your user base and perhaps the majority of your users because your sample size was skewed or wrong or moving in the wrong direction or whatever the case may be. So there's a lot of hype about AI recently, and this is a thing that I look at, and I hope you do too, with a healthy grain of skepticism. But places where AI really shines is the ability to take a large amount of qualitative information, in this case, paragraphs and paragraphs of use cases that you're going to be collecting over the course of your bot's development and the time that it's been deployed on your website, and then maybe analyze it. So I've shown you a really simple description here of what you can do to collect this qualitative information, and then you can run it through tools like ChatGPT. But I think perhaps a more advanced use case for Botpress might be to do something like summarize that information, or use an AI task to maybe condense some of that information, or whatever the case may be. If you have a very long bot, let's say your user is having a very long conversation with your bot, and you're interested in doing that, one of my favorite tools here is, and maybe something you'd be interested in saving at the very end of the conversation, is a transcript or a summary or both of that conversation. So let's say your user is talking to your bot and they have 15, 20, 30, 50 back and forths with that bot. And that happens over the course of many weeks, and you've got many people doing that. It can be really difficult to keep track of or read through all of those conversations, which is a bit silly, and obviously not a great use of your time. What you want is a summary of that, maybe like an executive summary. If you work in corporate, you're maybe used to putting those together. One thing I want to highlight for you is that Botpress does this automatically. Behind the scenes, we're constantly reading your bot is constantly reading the conversation and then providing its own summary of the conversation so that it can provide a kind of conversational-like experience. Let me show you what I mean by that. So if I pop into the agents menu, which is over here on the left, this little bot in the corner, if you open up the knowledge agent menu, you'll see some information here. So I want to highlight two variables for all of you that I think will be useful in this kind of scenario we've described of collecting a lot of information and then actually doing something usable or useful with that information. So the first thing I want to highlight is conversation.summaryagent.summary. This is a variable that takes the entire conversation your user has had with your bot and summarizes it. The next is the same thing, but it's .transcript instead. So this is a variable that the summary agent creates on its own. And then you can save this as well. So for instance, let's say you wanted to save the entire transcript of the conversation and a summary of the conversation. You could do that as well. You could take these variables and save them to your table. And now what you have is an entire CSV, not just of where your users have self-identified as a dentist or not a dentist, or what they're using Botpress for, or your bot for, or Toothy for in the case of this example, but also the entirety of what they've said. Then you can take hundreds and hundreds of iterations of those conversations, maybe analyze them for, do they mention X topic or Y topic? And then work with the information that way. So the idea here is not only are we collecting information, but we're actually doing usable things with it. So that's what I would highlight there. If you're interested in those variables, you can find them over here in the knowledge agent, or I must highlight for everyone here, you can also find them in the Botpress quick reference, which you can access by selecting this little question mark in the corner and then popping open this menu. You can see summary of the conversation and the full transcript of the conversation, which you can just copy to your clipboard by clicking it directly. You'll also find some other helpful formulas in the Botpress quick reference menu. Hey Goose, how's it going? All right, so the purpose of building this very simple bot today was to show you how, if you're a product manager or a community manager, you can take something that you've built on Botpress and you can see value almost immediately with what is really just a very simple bot. Maybe I'll close the loop here. And so for the people who have identified as a dentist, I'm going to say, great, keep on trucking. And perhaps the last thing I will note here before we move right along is that all of this was completely free. There's no reverse trial. There's no sign up and pay me before you can actually build this and see any value. We feel very strongly that you should be able to see value on Botpress without having to pay for anything. And then, of course, as time goes on, then you can either add additional features or expand the scope of your bot. But the idea here is it should be really simple for you to log in. I've provided you with the example of a product manager and a community manager duo because those are very familiar to us here. And these are things that we actually do use at Botpress. But realistically, let's say you were, for instance, the actual dentist yourself, and you were interested in popping this onto your website and seeing, are my patients more interested in gum procedures or cavity procedures or teeth whitening or whatever? Let's say, I think a good example of this is like a hairdresser. Let's say I'm a hairdresser and I've got a limited amount of time to, learn a new technique. And so I'm going to sign up for a course, but I'm trying to decide between doing balayage or total bleaching. And I don't know which one my clients want. And both of these seem equally popular, and I'm not really sure which one I want to do. Well, you pop this onto your website, let it simmer for a couple of days or weeks. And then as people that visit your website, so people that you know are booking services with you, respond to this question. And let's say 80% of them are interested in balayage, and nobody that you do hair for is getting a bleach job done. And there's really no value for you in doing that. So that's like another, a non-tech example of a place where just building a really simple bot and asking a yes or no or a one or two choice question can really make important differences while you're sleeping, right? Because the bot is going 24/7, which I love. So the idea here is we're always augmenting quantitative data with qualitative data. Are we able to export our user conversation data logs from Botpress before the expiry period of 90 days? Yes. As Goose says, you can actually see that there. You can export the data that you have saved in the conversation history tab, or you can save the conversation history, the summary like I just showed you, to a table like this one, and you can export that data as a CSV. There are a few different ways to do that as well. Certainly before the expiry period, as you've identified there. All right. I wonder what else would a product manager be interested in knowing about people? Because of course this is an interesting dynamic here. Maybe what I'm going to say, and Patrick, Patrick is on our team. If you're watching this, I'm very sorry because I might be spoiling what you're doing. But one of the things that we haven't addressed in building this kind of really simple information collection bot is that this assumes that you're going to be deploying this on your website. But of course, we know that traffic on your website can be kind of low relative to other places. Where do people hang out on the internet? Well, for instance, where are you watching this live stream from? You're watching it on Discord, or you're watching it on YouTube if you're watching the recording. But in any case, this is originally being streamed to our Discord server. This is increasingly common for SaaS companies to reduce the barrier between them and their users. Spoiler alert, big and bold, is to reduce the barrier between you and your users and talk to them directly. So we love doing this on Botpress. I think there are over 13,000 of you building on Botpress and on our Discord server, which is really exciting. It's really fun to talk to all of you. But of course, there are not 13,000 of us, I'll tell you that much. So one of the things that we're constantly asking ourselves is how can we make sense of the thousands of people that are chatting on the server every day and all the questions that they have and the feedback that they provide. By the way, I love hearing all of the stories that you all have about your bot building, and then all of the suggestions that you have, because it's really great to see people building with this. In any case, one of the questions that we often ask ourselves is like, we have all this information. How do we collect it? What do we do with it? Discord is a community tool, but it's not a product management tool. So it doesn't really do much to ingest that information, provide usable insights, and then make product recommendations for us. This is where the conversational interface of chatbots can really shine, because it's designed in such a way that you can be able to collect this information, as we have here with our product management bot, and then decide what information we want. Look for example, only use cases that mention academia or universities or X-rays, and then do things based on that information. So will we have a template for bots that can check out Discord in the future? Maybe. Wink, wink. There's something stuck in my eye. Junior Dev says, I see my bot is unable to be shared so that I can interact with it. Is it because I publish, or does it have a limit on how many times you can share? There's no limit to how many times you can share. Junior Dev, yeah, so as JB says, you just gotta hit this share button that I'm hovering over at the moment, and then it'll just pop open in a new bot over here. So in a new tab rather, and then you'll be able to interact and share this link as well with colleagues or partners. But there's no, you should be publishing your bot before you share it, and then there's no limit to how many times you can share. If you're running into trouble with that, it might be a separate issue, but we encourage you to share your bots. In fact, we absolutely have not put a limit on that. All right. So this is the dead simplest version of a bot that you can deploy in this way. Maybe the last thing I'll highlight for everyone before we part ways for the end of today is that how would you go about deploying this bot on your website? Let's say you've got a website like a WordPress website or a Wix website where you're able to maybe play around with the HTML a little bit. It's dead simple. All you'll do is navigate over to your bot dashboard. This is some placeholder text from a TikTok I made yesterday, but you'll be able to integrate it on the web chat and then share your bot from over here. So also maybe a good time to talk about the interesting things that you can see in this tab. You can see the conversation history, and then you can adjust things like config variables, logs, another place for you to test your bot out, for example, and then check out things like analytics as well. Alrighty, so if we pop back into our studio, I see some more people typing, so I'm gonna wait for there. Yeah, JB, we moved the share console. Is there any way to automatically extract the mobile number of the user if the chatbot is deployed on WhatsApp or Telegram? I'm actually not sure about this one. These are questions that maybe you might ask Patrick on Thursday's developer streams, which you might be able to find. You'll be able to sign up for that in the top left corner of our Discord server here. Anything involving like our integrations or our APIs, those are excellent questions for Patrick. Super simple website Q&A bot with a custom personality. Ah, beautiful. John McClane personality. That's excellent. Yeah, I think starting with a super simple bot is absolutely what I would recommend to all people. Of course, we love to see the insane and beautiful and complex bots that can do lots of different things across multiple integrations and automation workflows and all that stuff. But the point of me existing in the world is to show you that you can achieve real value with a bot in like 5 to 10 minutes. Just pop this on your website, and then you'll have thousands and thousands of rows of information that you didn't have previously, and that will, of course, improve your business. So the idea here is like start with a simple bot if you want, and then continue and expand further as time goes on. Patrick goes live Thursday mornings at 11 a.m. Eastern. You can RSVP for that in the top left corner of our server where it says events. Okay, so maybe the last thing I'm going to do is I just want to show you what it might look like if we were to include maybe some information about whether or not this person was a dentist. That might be something that you would be interested in. And so, for instance, let's say, my product manager, my community manager are having a conversation, and they're saying the information that we're collecting here is not really doing anything for me unless I know whether or not that person is a dentist. So here I'll just say something like, okay, I'll store this, is this person a dentist? And I'll store the Boolean variable here. And so now let's go and edit that insert record card, save the variable to it, and that's workflow.dentist. And let's try that again. Am I a dentist? No. For funsies, what field do I work in? Marketing. And of course we should see that here. So is this person a dentist? Yes or no? And then we see that's filled in with an empty check here. And let me just catch up on chat here. 3x OG Savage. So the comment nodes that you're talking about here, actually, this is a great opportunity for me to show them off because I do love them. The utility cards here are not meant to be included inside an actual node, but they're for you, the bot builder, in your team. So for instance, let's say I wanted to add a comment here. I might say something like, this node should remain empty. We don't want more info from dentists. And so this is like a little message I've left in the studio for any of my collaborators. So any of my team members who are interested in building this bot with me, I don't want them to adjust this. So you might think of this as analogous to comment nodes in places like Figma or Canva. That's what's going on here. You can also include things like images and links to YouTube video embeds in the studio as well. So 3x OG Savage, I hope that answers your question. And Rick, yeah, as JB and Jeremy have both said, the ideal use case here would be to link to some calendar service API, which will manage this on the back end for you. So the beauty of Botpress is that you can connect to those APIs pretty seamlessly as long as the calendar service you're using is exposing their own API. Then you can build with them that way. Okay. I'm going to issue my usual couple of minutes announcement. I'm going to be closing down the stream soon, so if you've got any last minute questions you want to ask, feel free to ask them now or forever hold your bot building peace. Otherwise, I will wrap up, but I will provide a few words at closing here. What I'll say is, if you are interested in getting started with some kind of conversational AI tool, but you're not really sure where to get started, I would say a simple yes or no question is the dead simplest and the easiest way to get started, and then understand where to go from there. So the idea here is like, for your business or for whatever project you're doing, I am sure that there is a yes or no question where if you had thousands and thousands of answers to this question, you would be able to improve your product or your project or your service or your business in some way. Whether it's, are you interested in this new thing I'm putting out? Or would you be interested in paying for this or buying this or adding this onto your tool or whatever the case may be? And then as time goes on, you can include functionalities there. There's lots of good conversation happening in the chat right now about things like APIs and can you include integrations and other tools and link to other services, and all of that's well and beautiful, and we do love to see that. But I want to emphasize 100% that sometimes simpler is better, or it's just as good as the rest of that. No need for apologies, Goose, but the point here is we've all been through that phase of like building a really simple bot, deploying it, and then understanding the needs of your business from there. I think one of the things I see bot builders do very often is they start building a really complex bot when really they might have been better served by building a really simple one to begin with, understanding the conversational flow and how that conversational information can improve their business, and then go from there. And then Adonis asks, can I connect Retune API with Botpress? That depends on the Retune side of things, but you can actually absolutely do connect to external APIs using Botpress. The idea is, does Retune have an API, and does it do what you would like it to do? And then 3x OG Savage asks, where should user, workflow, and bot variables be used? Only workflow. I see. Okay, so workflow variables are kind of your bread and butter. So for instance, these are all workflow variables. They're workflow.x. So these will be used to share and store information in a specific workflow. If I were to add another workflow, let's say I wanted to, schedule an appointment, and I had a separate scheduling appointment workflow here, you can see here in the variables panel on the bottom left that those variables from earlier are no longer available. That's because workflow variables are only available for the workflows in which they're created, so you can do something else with them over here. But let's say, for example, you wanted to collect the user's name and refer to them by name in all of your different workflows. That's places where you would use the user variable. Bot variables are bot-wide. Those are separate things, but for most use cases, you should be covered by workflow and user variables. I hope that answers your question, 3x OG Savage. And then as Jeremy says, sometimes connecting to an external API, but you might not even need it. And you might find that as time goes on, perhaps Botpress has got you covered for what you need. Connecting to APIs is fun, but if you worked in the space for long enough, you know that the fewer tools you use to do the same thing, the better. All right, I want to thank you all for tuning into today's live stream. I want to encourage you to sign up for next week's live stream, or Patrick's live stream on Thursdays. Happens at 11 a.m. Eastern time. Patrick's live stream are very narrowly focused on developer tools and connecting to things like APIs and integrations. The link will be up as soon as I hang up this call, so stay tuned for a bit. And if you're watching the YouTube video, of course, you'll be able to find that there. I'm live on Tuesdays at 3 p.m. every week. Otherwise, have a wonderful, wonderful morning or afternoon or evening, depending on what time it is where you are. And I'll see you all next week. Bye, everyone. Happy bot building.